Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt your lunch, but I believe the food is good, but the talk will be even better. I'm William. I work for the South China Morning Post as a senior correspondent, and I'm also the club's governor for correspondence. And a very good afternoon to all the FCC members, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this afternoon's talk. And I believe you won't be bored because Mr. Zhou Bo has told me, ask any questions. There is no boundary. Please shoot, okay? And let me just go through a short introduction of our guest speaker today. Senior Colonel Zhou Bo. Among the many Chinese scholars and commentators that I talk to regularly, and Mr. Zhou has always been regarded as one of, I wouldn't say one of, the most open, thoughtful, and engaging, and candid. If you do not believe me, ask questions later, right? Among the Chinese strategic community, and he has been working very hard to make China's case, talk about China's narratives, and it's a good chance for us to hear him look at the Chinese perspective of the military side of things. Mr. Zhou started his military service in 1979, and he served in different posts in Guangzhou Air Force Regional Command. From 1993, he headed north to the Chinese Ministry of Defense, where he worked as Staff Officer, Deputy Director General of West Asia Africa Bureau, then Deputy Director General of the General Planning Bureau of the Foreign Affairs Office of the Defense Ministry. Then he went to Africa to serve as Chinese Defense Attaché to Republic of Namibia. And he come back and to serve as Director of the Center of Security Cooperation in International Military Cooperation Office that many of the military attachés are very familiar in the Chinese Defense Ministry. He is now a senior fellow of the Center of the International Security and Strategy at prestigious Tsinghua University. He is also, let me say a little bit of advertisement, SEMP's China Forum expert. He's a very familiar name. If you read newspaper, he has published more than 200 articles on international platforms, including the Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, Financial Times, NYT, WSJ, and the Diplomat, etc., etc. And he is also a very familiar face on TV and on some key international security occasions, including Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore and the Shangshan Forum in Beijing. He did his undergraduate study at China's Air Force Engineering College and hold a postgraduate degree from St. Edmund College of Cambridge University. And he's also a visiting fellow to the Land Warfare Study Center of the Australian Army in 1999. Any Australian here? Yeah, and he attended various courses at Harvard, Westminster University, and also China's own National Defense University, PLA University of Science and Tech, and PLA Army Command College in Shijiazhuang, which is sometimes dubbed as China's West Point. So this is what I'm going to do. I will give the floor to Mr. Zhou Bo to talk about his book, his perspective, and his views, and then I will take advantage of my role today to ask him a few questions that's very keen to many of the media in heart, and then I will open up the floor, all right? So, Mr. Zhou, over to you.
Thank you, William, and thank you everyone for coming here. It's a large gathering, which is not expected, because I was supposed, I was asked by South China Morning Post to come here to give a few talks, for their events. But this is a happy surprise. So I'm most happy to talk to all of you. First of all, something about my book. The book actually is not a new book. It's a collection of what I've written in the last 12 to 13 years. But what makes me somewhat different is that I'm a Chinese who only write in English. In the last 13 years, I've only written 1,000 Chinese characters. And that is because we have a Chinese magazine called Newsweek, and in which a number of experts have to talk on one issue. So everyone is given about 1,000 characters. Besides, I have never written any thing in Chinese. The second thing is, most of my writings were found in Western media, rather than in Chinese media. So these 2 points, could be, this kind of characteristics could be found in my book. Then, now, where are we in the world today? And where are we going? Everybody knows that the international order is changing. What is most surprising is even American Secretary of State would acknowledge that unipolar moment is not normal, right? It's very interesting for me to hear American Secretary of State would talk like that. So it seems everybody has agreed that this world indeed is moving towards multipolarization, which is actually the theme of Munich Security Conference this year, which I attended. Then, for us to see where we are going, we have to look a little bit back at what has happened. I won't make a long speech. What I just want to tell you is that we often hear a few terms, which for me are total bullshits, like a liberal democracy, rule-based orders, these kind of things. Let me tell you why. Is there such a thing like a liberal international order at all in the world? I don't think so. I think there was never such an order at all. Why is that? You see, the problem of the Western narration is they just believe the rules and the regime that are indeed made by the West after the Second World War are the international order, and it is liberal international order. I challenge that. After the Second World War, we have so many major events, like independence of 51 African nations, like rivalry of the two countries for decades, like the dissolution of the Soviet Union, like a rise of China. None of this is a small thing, right? They're all major events that have shaped the international order after the Second World War. So how can you say that the order after World War is just a kind of liberal international order, regardless of all these major events? So the so-called liberal international order looks at best just like a very short period of time after dissolution of the Soviet Union and before the full rise of China, for about 15 years or so. Because Western democracy started to decline from 2006. And who is doing sabotage? Nobody is doing sabotage. Then the Western countries should tell me why you have been in steady decline from 2006 if liberal democracy is really, really so good. And then look at this whole world. How many countries are described as full democracy? Only 24 out of 195 countries. So this is narration of a small group of nations. And this is based upon hubris and narcissism. Then, when they find that this kind of democracy is in steady decline, they start to ask why, and they start to look for an enemy. And of course, China looks like an enemy, right? Looks most like an enemy, and along with Russia, right? Then, Who looks more like a revisionist now, China or the United States under Trump administration? We are described, China and Russia are described as revisionists, right? So who are really revisionists, right? Third thing, rule-based international order. Okay, if this is a kind of a indirect accusation on China, I can tell you, China has joined over 600 treaties in the world. In fact, it's very difficult for me to think, okay, which treaty we haven't joined? It's very difficult for me. There might be some, but I don't know. So China has joined all the treaties, just like Western countries. The problem is, when we talk about these rules, all countries are driven by self-interests. Nobody's stupid. And we just pretend not being able to understand the argument of the other side. So the West coined this term first, rule-based order. But we are following the same rules. But sometimes our interpretations are different, right? So we are just like two men pretending to be deaf men talking to one another. Just give you one example. UN Convention of Law of the Sea that is often used by the United States to accuse China. My answers are just two questions, very simple. If the UN Convention Law of the Sea is so good, why won't the United States ratify it? If it is not good, why would you challenge others in the name of it? Tell me. So far, I haven't heard any Americans trying to convince me on this point. Yeah? So even, just to take another example, Article 58. I led the Chinese delegation to go to Pentagon to talk about the legal implications of UN Convention Law of the Sea. But the result is, after 2 days negotiation, we all agree to freedom of navigation, but we disagree on what entails in freedom of navigation. So, but the international law itself sometimes is ambiguous because this maritime law was negotiated for 9 years, the longest in human history. And for people to speed up such kind of negotiation, there are a lot of loopholes and ambiguities here and there. So that makes people, easier to sign it. And if you don't like it, you can make a declaration on certain articles. Yeah. So, I mean, all these terms are at least questionable. Yeah. So, what are the dangers China is facing? Yeah. Two places. One is South China Sea, another in Taiwan Strait. Nowhere else, because China has no intention to challenge Americans' global military presence. On South China Sea, why would I put South China Sea in front of the Taiwan Strait? Because American would send aircraft and ships to conduct almost daily reconnaissance and surveillance. That happens too often. And according to Pentagon, China would have done 180 interceptions in 2 years' time. That would mean one interception every 4 days. So such kind of frequency is really horrendous, right? So we might have really a kind of collision between aircraft and ships. How to resolve it? I don't know. Even if I know all the details of all those talks ever since 1998, I don't believe this is resolvable. Why is that? Because Americans would believe that, okay, we're doing this according to international law. But China would consider the rocks and islands in the South China Sea Chinese territory. I know the international ruling is not like this, but this is what Chinese believe. And one of the quoted danger is what? Is China is getting stronger. If China is getting stronger, the PLA will just become more determined to safeguard what China considers to be its sovereignty. So that means there would Chinese pilots and sailors would just be more determined and sometimes bolder than before. So I don't know how to resolve this. Yeah, it's good for us to talk, but I haven't found something really looking like a silver bullet. Okay, sometimes I'm so pessimistic to consider maybe another collision, as what happened in 2001, might make two sides cool-headed. Not necessarily Chinese side and American side, probably Chinese side or the Australian side, because Australia now, yeah, is provoking China in our eyes. The second issue is about the Taiwan issue. On the Taiwan issue, the first thing I want to say is we have never announced a deadline or timeline. Peter Hexes, said at the Shangri-La dialogue that he believed a conflict could be imminent. But this is interesting. Why? Because a couple of years ago, that is in 2023 and 2024, his predecessor said a conflict is not inevitable or not imminent. And the Australian Prime Minister also said it's not imminent. So at this level, there is such a stark contrast, right? And he said it is public that the Chinese leader wants the PLA to be ready. No, it's not public, because you cannot show me a document. There are rumors flying around. That is true, right? Then what about the situation? Just imagine, put yourself in the shoe of a Chinese to consider. China is now definitely the second strongest nation on earth. And we could become the largest economy, even by GDP, maybe in another 10 years' time. I say maybe. Why? Before COVID, everybody said China will surpass the United States to become the largest economy by 2030. A British think tank even said, oh, that could be achieved in 2027, right? But after COVID, some people say, okay, Chinese population is aging and the Chinese economy has some problems. Yeah, they're all true. But still, we have AI, we have robots, right? All these are coming out. So still, it's not a sure thing that we'll always stay number two. So if China becomes number one, okay, or even if we are still number two, just imagine for a moment, could the strongest nation on earth afford to have a part of what it considered to be its territory be separated forever? That is Chinese mentality. How can you tell me you are the strongest nation on earth, but a part of you is not still yours? And these people there still are trying to provoke you, just like Lai Ching-te is doing. So if we are serious, or if we are impatient now, we could already start a war. Because Lai Ching-te said, the Chinese mainland is hostile foreign force. That clearly is a kind of two-state remark, so which could trigger mainland China using force according to China's secession law. Then there are three conditions for China to use force. This first one is Taiwan declared independence. This is very much like that. The second is foreign forces separating mainland China, separating Taiwan from mainland China. I can't see which foreign force is so strong that can separate Taiwan from mainland China. I don't believe this one will materialize. The third thing is also interesting. The third thing is, if Chinese government believe that all possibilities for peaceful reunifications are exhausted forever. This matters tremendously. So on this billion-dollar question, how could we ensure peace in Taiwan Strait? My answer is always, let the Chinese government believe peaceful reunification is still possible. If Chinese government believe it is still possible, China would not lose patience. China would not believe that, okay, all the possibilities for peaceful reunification are gone forever. Yeah. Now another word, status quo. When people talk about Taiwan Strait, people always say, okay, we wish to the status quo be maintained. I wish to say there is nothing like status quo that is static. Status quo is never static. It is constantly changing. After Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, the status quo has changed. And the Chinese aircraft now would fly across the medium line as often as they wish, whenever they wish. So this is a new status quo, which has become irreversible, okay? So they will feel the pressure on the throat, yeah, gradually, incrementally, and more forcefully if they are more provocative. That is the only thing I can see, yeah? So let me stop here, okay? And I just try to answer your questions.
Thank you. How spicy? Good enough. Let me quickly start some of my my questions regarding the latest happenings. I will need your eyes to help us to decode a few of the military-related things that has caught the eye of the world and is most likely having a profound impact in the next few years, including the Victory Day parade in Beijing in September and the recently closed fourth plenum in Beijing. It's the political nerd like me usually delve very deep into the documents, and one thing really struck many of the observers was one of the top goals was to strengthen strategic deterrence force, which is nuclear force, to ensure global strategic balance and stability. And meanwhile, President Trump actually talked about vow to restart the nuclear test and all this. My question is, are we entering into a new era of nuclear race? And what kind of response we would be expecting from China's side?
Well, I would not say we're going to enter into a nuclear race, but some people have said we're entering into another nuclear age. Yeah? In terms of Trump's remarks, all what he said were wrong. All what he said are wrong. First of all, no country is conducting nuclear test. Secondly, if a nuclear test is to be conducted, it is not by the War Department, it's by Energy Department, right? And the third thing is, the United States cannot do it immediately. It has to be prepared for at least 2 years, 2 to 3 years, yeah? So the last thing is, people don't know what he's talking about. Is he really talking about underground nuclear test? Or is he testing actually the missiles that can carry nuclear warheads? So for a president, that is all wrong on this kind of most alarming statement. I really don't know how to comment, but these are the facts, right? And in terms of China's latest statement, there is something new there. I believe this is something new that I have never heard about, yeah? Just to strengthen China's strategic, yeah?
Yes.
The force. That I would interpret as a clear instruction to increase China's nuclear force, yeah? So, but as to how many are considered to be enough, we in China never talk about that. We never talk about number. But according to SIPRI and Washington, to Pentagon, we had 600 nuclear warheads by the end of last year, yeah, against more than 5,000 of the United States and Russia. Oh, by the way, this is not a flattery to my Russian friends, but Trump is also wrong to consider the United States is the country that has the largest nuclear arsenal. It's Russia, yeah. Russia has more than, because all these figures are estimation, theoretically Russia has 350 more, yeah, than the United States. So I believe China will increase its nuclear force. Why is that? Because PLA is trying to modernize its military. So everybody see how PLA Air Force is developing, Navy is developing, and even to a great extent how our ground force is developing. So how come we would leave our, nuclear force behind? There's no reason for us to do that, right? So, and even in the past, we talk about make PLA nuclear force to be strong and effective. Oh, to be small and effective. How small? There's no figure. And how effective? Effective means you also need to modernize it. You just cannot do maintenance work, right? So it also indicates a kind of moderate increase. So I believe China's nuclear force will continue to grow. Then to what extent? My answer is very simple. To the extent that nobody would ever dare to think about using nuclear weapons against China first. That's my simple answer. And is anybody thinking about that? Yes. Even Albert Corby, the Deputy American Secretary of Defense, talked about it before, talked about a scenario in Taiwan Strait in which the United States has to use nuclear weapons first, because some people, actually a lot of people in the United States, fear that they are already losing, the advantage in a conventional warfare, over the PLA. So that's why these kind of talks are found. And why they never talk about it to Russia? This is this question I ask myself. Why they never talk about using nuclear weapons against Russia? Look at this war in Ukraine. Russia actually has made a number of thin-veiled hints on using nuclear weapons. They never talk about it directly, but they did make hints. And these hints have worked. They have deterred NATO from deploying any troops on Ukrainian soil. And this strategy is typically described as to escalate before de-escalate, right? So this strategy has worked. So if I just, as a PLA veteran, if I look at this war, I would say I would have to compare Chinese military and the Russian military, yeah? And then these are the facts, okay? I'm not saying which one is strong. Chinese military is the largest military in the world. China's defense budget is 3 times bigger than Russia's, although we are 1/4 of American, right? And China has all types of weapons available. So probably China probably doesn't have what President Putin said, cruise missile with a nuclear engine or reactor. That is something that Russia has not announced. Besides, it's very hard for you to tell me that the Chinese military is necessarily inferior to Russia. Yeah, I know my Russian friends are here, but this is my honest answer. China even has 3 aircraft carrier now. Yeah, Russia has 1. So then why the United States never talk about a direct war against Russia? I think that is because of Russia's nuclear weapon. But then remember one thing: having an increased number of nuclear warheads, but still you can have no first-use policy. This is different. So, for example, China constantly asks for countries, including Russia and the United States, to adopt this no first-use policy. These are 2 different things. I don't believe China will change its no first-use policy.
Right. Thank you. And we have seen, besides the first time China showing its nuclear triads and the new ICBM, Dongfeng 5C and all that, another thing that struck many people's eye was China's demonstration of its smart force, the drones, the UAVs and all that. And in the same document, it always talk about China should continue to push for new domain forces and unmanned intelligent combat forces. Tell us about your assessment of who China and the US, we are not talking about anyone else, who is leading on these two fields, which are regarded as the most determinant factors that will decide a future war?
My answer to you is very simple. In the future, China and Russia would be the dominating countries making full use of AI in modern warfare.
Not US?
China and the US.
Oh, China and US.
Both China and the US. Why is that? You see, right now in the international arms sales, United States, France, Russia, and China. But the war between India and Pakistan tells us nowadays it's not only that you buy a few aircraft, yeah? You have to buy the whole system. And in the future, only two countries would be the leading countries in AI. That is China, that is United States. Have you ever heard much progress about AI development in Europe? No. Not in Japan? No, right? So that is how in the future, I believe China will dominate that. I published an article in South China Morning Post, and I could not see that Indonesia has made the decision, right? Yeah, so even if they buy Rafale, for example, if they have decided to buy Rafale now, and probably in 5 years' time, all the Rafale will be delivered. And then it probably will take another 5 years to them to be trained on Rafale. And in 10 years' time, probably 30% of aircraft are already unmanned. And what's the use of the Rafale?
Okay, my last question, I promise. Anti-corruption. We have seen a string of high-level generals who fell under the sword of the disciplinary investigators, and many people talk about the promotion of General Zheng Shengming, who is a disciplinary head, and he's promoted to the China CMC's deputy. What's the political message behind that? And in the fourth plenum document, they always say that the PLA will need to embark on its movements to advance its budget management reform and its military procurement system improvement and improve evaluations and all that. Does it mean that while PLA is pushing a lot on its hardware side, which it has shown remarkable results, but at the software side, at the control side, it's still lagging behind?
Well, you just cannot prove that, you see, because China has enjoyed peace for more than 4 decades. We don't have a war. And I actually have read something many times. They say because of the corruption found in PLA, so therefore their weapon systems are not so reliable. I think there are two different things. You see, last year we testified at ICBM into the Southern Pacific. It seems to be all right, right? So as far as corruption is concerned, I would say it is very sad, yeah, to see so many senior generals, disciplined. But then I saw it in another way. Because the PLA is not in a vacuum, they are just part of the whole society. So on our TV every day, almost every day, you will see some very big names, are caught in trouble. So that means I could interpret it this way. So for civilians or for the military, actually the central government is having the same policy. That is zero tolerance. If you have a problem, no matter how important you are, you'll be prosecuted, yeah? So that is exactly what is happening. But of course, I wish this would never happen. But this could also be seen as a kind of effort to clean the body, yeah, to make yourself healthy, yeah.
Would that affect PLA's war readiness towards all the major strategic missions like Taiwan and all that? Because there have been lots of observers arguing that when some senior figures is taken away, then a body of knowledge is gone.
I think that would, to some extent, discourage people's morale, right? But for a moment, because these people will be replaced very soon. So because we have not really entered into war, I don't believe that will really affect our combat capability. Because the truth is, we are doing more and more joint exercises, right? Okay. And we're rehearsing all kinds of scenarios, right, for the worst situation. So I don't think that would be a decisive element.
Okay. I've seen you raise your hand third time. Please identify yourself and.
I was the chief economist for Warburgs and for Rothschilds, out here for a few years. Two questions. The first one is, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's the second question now. Is the Taiwan, there's a lot of concern here in Hong Kong whether this takeover is going to be what I call overt, which is nasty military boots on the ground, or what I myself am wondering whether it could be covert, which is what Napoleon did to Corsica. He turned off the water, surrounded it, no water, no food, no electricity, cyber attacks, and that's then kind of a done deal. That could be done in one night. And I don't know if it were to come to that, given what you were saying before, if there were to be a proper takeover, which I don't think might be necessary anyway, but if there were, would it be a covert or an overt, do you think?
Do you want the second question to come together?
Maybe just a straightforward answer, yeah.
Please,
Well, you see, I was never, in the operation department, but according to my common sense of a PLA veteran, for any operation to happen, normally there are quite a few plans, plan A, B, C, D, or it could be a combination of all these plans. Yeah. So if and these plans, widely talked about in Western media, so on and so forth. But even these kind of plans could be top secrets for us, right? So for us to speculate, yeah, it's meaningless, yeah. So I think I definitely believe we should have quite a few plans, but these plans definitely will change, because if we're not doing it now, then, for example, if you have 3 or 4 plans, in a few years' time, definitely they will change. So nobody knows.
The second one, which we will know even less about, is Thucydides' trap and its applicability to China-U.S. relations. Shanwei Zheng wrote a very useful leader in the South China a couple of days ago, where he's basically questioning whether this very Western concept, put forth by Graham Allison, is applicable to an Eastern mindset. Okay. Now, what he is saying in simple talk is that yes, we kind of figured out that China's a rising power. I mean, if anybody here doesn't know that, then kind of leave. But what he's saying is that must it be this Thucydides trap, or is it maybe not just a different way of working China-U.S. competitiveness from the Chinese angle, which is frankly in my mind much more subtle than this American, where I'd lived for many years, go football game on Monday morning.
Okay.
So is this a Thucydides trap applicable, and then the operational side of it?
No.
Okay.
Thucydides has not coined this trap. Graham Allison coined this trap. It's a Graham Allison trap, yeah? Because Thucydides, what Thucydides has really said are actually 3 reasons for wars, which I believe: honor, fear, and interests. If we are going to have a war in Taiwan Strait, right? So which applies most? The first one, honor. Because as I have explained, China simply cannot afford to have a part still, separated. So this is interesting, you see, how much honor play in human beings. In 19th century, if you and I have a disagreement, we could have a duel over something which is totally insignificant nowadays. But at that time, both of us would take it very seriously, because I think you are damaging my honor, and I would defend my honor with my own life. So this issue primarily is about honor. So of course there are also some interests, right? Some people say, okay, with Taiwan taken back, then Chinese aircraft carrier may just have a better seaport on the east side. Of course that is true, but first and foremost is an honor issue, I would say.
Right, so I was actually going to go more to the China-U.S. relation, whether Thucydides's chart is applicable in its simplicity to the China-U.S. relations. Must America beat up on China because China wants to rise in power in America? That's kind of the...
Well, the fact is, I don't know how many countries are like China in history, but indeed China's rise has been peaceful. Yeah, and this is miraculous. This is not easy for a country. So in theory, we could suggest that China could continue, because China's rise is already given. Yeah, it's no longer an issue of whether China rise or not. China has already rise, but the question is, what is developed and fully raised China is going to do? Yeah, so I don't believe that China and the U.S. Will come into conflict just because China is getting stronger. But we do have these two issues. The first is unintended collision, yeah, which is dangerous. The second issue is whether the United States wants to become involved or not. So the American side actually has a better answer for you. I can't answer.
The military-industrial complex does.
Sorry?
The military-industrial complex does.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Sorry, I can't see you, but please identify yourself.
Hello, I'm To Han Shi, a Singaporean freelance journalist. Recently, the British newspapers have been, some British newspapers and some British politicians have been playing up fears and stories about Chinese spies, in the UK and America. For example, the Times of London ran some stories saying that Chinese female spies are going to Silicon Valley to seduce or marry American tech billionaires to steal American tech secrets. What are your comments on that?
I really don't know, you see. Yeah. Because I simply cannot be in a position to answer this question. Yeah, if our people are really as good as I described, yeah, I'm proud of them. Right. Yeah.
Lovely answer. Anyone else? Please.
Hi, name is Richard. I'm actually born in mainland China, but spent almost 10 years in Hong Kong here. So my question is, you see, like within the last month, you have the USS Nimitz losing 2 airplanes into the South China Sea, and then you have the USS Truman on the U.S. Navy anniversary still, damaged and unrepaired on the one side, and then you have like you have the Fujian aircraft carrier going into service today, and then you have all the new military equipment showing up in the parade as well on the Chinese side. So with this sort of like a shift in terms of the conventional forces, I mean, like, of course, on the other side, the U.S. still owning 11 aircraft carriers and also a large conventional forces. But like, there's sort of like a trend within social media for onshore China. Like, people are saying like, oh, we're surpassing the U.S. in terms of conventional forces, both in terms of like combat readiness and then also effectiveness. And then like you have the U.S. using the USS Nimitz instead of another aircraft carrier, doing the show of force in the South China Sea.
Question.
Yes, you have like sort of this thing shifting. Do you think is sort of the ruse from the U.S. side trying to play into the sentiment of the onshore Chinese, or is there like actually a strategic or structural shift within the conventional military power between these two? And does it actually lead to more instability within the region you mentioned, like the South China Sea and then also the Taiwanese Strait?
Well, you see, it's common sense, yeah, for any naval officers to understand. For one warship to work, it needs to have 2 ships to back up. So only 1 in 3 ships can actually work. The United States is suffering a problem of not having enough ships, yeah, to operate anywhere in the world. So China's naval ships is the largest in the world. Here, quantity has a quality of its own, right? Yeah. But this, what you said reminds me of an article actually I've written in my book. It happened a few years ago too. Quite a few American ships have problem of colliding with something. And what is the result? What is the finding? The finding is that they are too tired. And they work overtime. So if they work overtime, then they need some good rest, right? And why don't you stay away from the water, which you do not claim sovereignty, and let your sailors have some better rest, yeah? To be less provocative, then you probably won't have so many incidents of your own.
Edith?
Hi, Edith Terry, writer and editor. I just have a very simple question. Mill-mill relations between the U.S. and China have been stalled or suspended now for a number of years. And over last week, Hegseth, the Secretary of War of the U.S., said that mill-mill relations would be renewed. Now, what do you make of that? I know that the people in the consulate here have not had very much to do for a number of years handling those sorts of relationships, even at a lower level.
Well, this sounds too familiar, yeah, for me, because the complaint often comes from the United States that the Chinese side do not want to talk to the American side, and the Chinese do not want to pick up the phone, or when the American side wants to talk to someone, there's nobody, you know, answering the phone call, something like that, right? But from Chinese side, we never ever said that this relationship is suspended. And that might not be true in your definition, but it shows that our description shows that we believe we're still in a normal relationship, yeah? So you have to look at this. And so even after Nancy Pelosi's visit, we have a suspended, yeah, with quite a few announcements. But the Ministry of Defense in China still refused to say that this relationship is severed. So there is different understanding. But indeed, this is the fact that Americans want to talk more than Chinese would wish, yeah? So if I look at the Cold War history, no matter how many problems we had between two enemies, they keep on talking with one another. That is something different. But when it came to China, China is different, I would say. But I think I'm wondering about this because I wrote my article, which is found in my book in my essay that was published in Foreign Affairs. I encourage China to talk more. My slogan is, Cold War's slogan is trust but verify, right? Verify what? Verify the number of nuclear warheads. Because the Soviet Union and the United States basically had an equal number of nuclear warheads, so they need to verify. But between China and the United States, there's no need for us to verify nuclear warheads because we're having much smaller nuclear arsenal. But we need to, what? Trust but talk. That means because we do not trust each other, so we need to build a habit of talking to one another. So I'm one of those who actually encourages this kind of talking more often, between the two militaries. But then sometimes there is something interesting. Sometimes Chinese really do not pick up the phone to answer. Why? I think China knows what the United States wants to say. And by not talking to you, I'm showing my attitude. I know what you want to talk about, and I do not want to talk to you. This is just like a wife doesn't want to talk to a husband sometimes, right? After a quarrel, the wife just was silent, for 3 days. I refused to talk to my husband. But the husband, of course, knows what the wife is thinking, right?
Ladies first, then Kim-Ming. Venus first. Yeah.
A question from a journalist from a local Chinese newspaper. After Xi and President Trump meeting in the Korean, the Trump has said that during his term, Beijing will not attack Taiwan. So since Trump's term lasts until 2029, does this mean Xi will seek another term at the 21st Party Congress in 2027? Thank you.
Well, you see, when Trump says something, especially when he says, who said something, I'm not sure. Yeah, the person he mentioned really said something. Yeah, just like the example I have given to you in one paragraph, it's totally flawed. Yeah, with the facts. So I just cannot comment on that because this has to be very serious. Did President Xi really told him all these kind of things? Chinese media has no report, and I'm in no position, to know that. It's just as simple as that. Yeah.
Kim-Ming?
Thank you. I apologize for asking an off-topic question. I know Hong Kong is tiny and insignificant in today's discussion, but since you are sitting in Hong Kong, we are in Hong Kong, do you care to share with us your views on Hong Kong after all the last several years, the changes? Thank you.
This is domestic politics, right? Which I normally do not talk about. I think Hong Kong suffered a few years ago, especially during COVID, right? I actually do not come to Hong Kong so often. That's very interesting, because I often would go to Singapore. Singapore would nowadays host different meetings of all sorts, but I don't believe, apart from South China Morning Post, I don't believe I have met many experts on international relations in Hong Kong. Somebody told me we do not have many experts on international relations in Hong Kong. Yeah? But when I came here, I talked to people. It seems that people's confidence has largely resumed, to a greater extent, and even stock exchange, everything is coming back. So I'm absolutely a layman about Hong Kong, but it seems to me that Hong Kong's future definitely now is fully integrated with the rest of China, and I believe China. Then basically the question is about China. China, had some economic, problem, but I believe Chinese economy is still growing, and the people's confidence in China is still there, and I even have good hope for South China Morning Post. Why is that? Because South China Morning Post is next to none when it comes to coverage on China. Why William told me just now that this newspaper is booming? Because people believe that China is just moving ahead. So more and more people want to know more about China, so they want to read the South China Morning Post. The same is true with Hong Kong. I'll give you two examples. One is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Another is BRICS, right? Both are expanding. There are a lot of people knocking on the door. Why is that? I think it is just like a train that has already moved. Actually, people don't know where it is moving, but everybody is afraid to be left behind. I must catch the train. That is the popularity of these two organizations.
So, final question and final remarks. I want to ask you very simply, should the world fear China, and what's your answer and why? Coming back to your book.
I have written 102 articles to answer this simple question, and you want me to say why. Well, my answer definitely is no. I think I do not want to talk about China being Pacific country. China is a peace-loving country. Peace and justice are just, on everybody's lips. And it depends on really how you define it, right? But if we look at the history of People's Republic of China, you see, after People's Republic of China was founded, China basically would have a war with its neighbor in every decade before 1977. Yeah? With India, with Vietnam, with America in Korean Peninsula. But after 1979, China has entered no war with anyone. And if you look at the PLA overseas, there is something common. PLA overseas is just doing three things: counter-piracy, disaster relief, and peacekeeping. What is common in these three operations is that they're all humanitarian in nature. It's not accidental. It's a deliberate choice. China just wants to be focused on these humanitarian areas. And nobody would disagree about the importance of these kind of things. But many people would disagree on the war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, right, which has cost so many people's life. So it's miraculous that PLA has not killed even a single foreigner anywhere in the world in the last 4 decades and past. Yes, 20 Indian soldiers and 4 Chinese soldiers died, in 2020, but that's a deadly blow. And that is on the question of sovereignty. Elsewhere, China has not killed even a single foreigner. So if you compare that with what the US has been doing, don't you believe with Chinese you feel safer?
Thank you. And we have to, can we have one last question? I'm so sorry. We have a running clock and there's a hard stop here. Thank you very much to come to FCC's event. And I have a little bit of promotion again. And in November, we have a whole series of good talks similar on November 13th. We will have Karen Howe here talking about Empire of AI. And there will be a club breakfast with Professor Joseph Stilson. And if you are not yet an FCC member, we have a brochure here, and you can sign it up and join us for more intellectual talks on geopolitics, money making, and arts, history, all kind of wide-ranging subjects. Thank you, Mr. Zhou Bo.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will, on behalf of the club, here are some very small gifts for you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Let's take a picture.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.